In the brutal calculus of the Second World War, surviving a combat tour was a statistical improbability. Surviving 100 missions was a near impossibility. Each sortie was a gauntlet of flak, enemy fighters, and mechanical failure. A pilot who endured this 100 times over was more than just an ace. He was a living symbol of defiance, a man who had mastered the lethal odds. Imagine this man. He has faced the worst the enemy could throw at him and returned, time and time again.
We won! It's over!
The war ends. He is a hero, a survivor, one of the lucky few. And then, weeks later, he is killed. Not by an enemy bullet, but during a routine training flight on a clear day back home. This is not a hypothetical. This is a recurring tragedy, a pattern hidden within the records of victory. It presents a profound paradox. How could a man who defeated death in the skies 100 times over be killed by the very machines he had mastered, long after the shooting had stopped? This was not a failure of skill. It was the bill for his survival coming due. The archives show us that the greatest dangers these pilots faced were not always external. As the mission tallies climbed, an invisible stress accumulated, a weight on the mind that no airframe was ever designed to carry. Now, let's open the archives and zero in on the story.
His name was Major Richard Dick Bong. If you served in the Pacific Theater, he was a legend. If you were back home, he was a headline, America's ace of aces. By December 1944, he had accumulated 40 confirmed aerial victories, a record that would never be broken by any other American pilot. But that number, 40, obscures the reality. Those victories were achieved over the course of more than 200 combat missions. 200 times he climbed into the cramped cockpit of his P-38 Lightning. 200 times he flew hundreds of miles over open ocean or hostile jungle, his senses strained to the breaking point, listening for the crackle of the radio, scanning the sky for the black specks that meant death. 200 times he engaged in swirling, high-G dogfights, where a split-second hesitation meant oblivion. And 200 times he landed, his flight suit soaked in sweat, his hands shaking, while comrades he'd breakfasted with that morning did not. The military had a term for the psychological cost: combat fatigue. It was a sterile phrase for a profound spiritual and neurological erosion. As Bong's mission tally grew, so did the weight. His commanders saw it. He was flying on raw nerves, his famous marksmanship warring with an exhaustion that went bone deep. He was, by his own admission, just plain scared. He had survived longer than anyone had a right to. He had seen too many friends vanish in a fireball. Finally, in late 1944, he was ordered home for good. The war was over for Dick Bong. He was pulled from the line, celebrated as the nation's greatest hero, and sent on a publicity tour.
We celebrate this victory, but our work is not done. We must continue to invest in our future. Buy bonds today.
He married his sweetheart, Marge. He was safe. But the machine of war was not finished with him. A
hero of his stature couldn't just be idle. He was assigned to Lockheed's plant in Burbank, California. His new role? Test pilot. His new aircraft, the P-80 Shooting Star. This was not the P-38 he knew like the back of his hand. The P-80 was alien.
It was America's first operational jet fighter. A revolutionary machine that represented a quantum leap in technology, speed, and complexity. It was the future. And for a man saturated with the stress of the past, this new, untested future held its own insidious dangers. The transition from combat ace to test pilot was, on paper, a move from extreme danger to relative safety. But this assumption fundamentally misunderstands the nature of the machines and the state of the men flying them. The P-38 Lightning, which Bong had mastered, was a piston-engine, propeller-driven aircraft. It was a complex, twin-engine beast, but it was a known quantity. Its behaviors, its sounds, its limits, and, crucially, its emergency procedures were etched into his muscle memory, forged in the crucible of hundreds of combat hours. The Lockheed P-80 Shooting Star was not an evolution. It was a revolution. It was powered by a single General Electric turbojet, an entirely new form of propulsion. This machine had no propellers, meaning no torque to compensate for. It flew nearly 100 miles per hour faster than the Lightning. Its systems were completely different. The cockpit layout, the feel of the controls, the very sound of the engine, it was all alien. Learning to fly it wasn't just learning. It was unlearning thousands of hours of instinct. This is where the lethal mechanics of safety emerge. For a pilot suffering from profound combat fatigue, a neurological state of heightened startle response, diminished executive function, and deeply ingrained routines, this unlearning process is perilous. His mind, under pressure, will not default to the new, thinly practiced checklist. It will default to the P-38, to the actions that saved his life over New Guinea. On August 6, 1945, the same day the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, Major Bong climbed into P-80A number 44-85048 for his 12th flight in the aircraft. He took off from the Burbank airfield. Just moments later, at an altitude of only 400 feet, the primary fuel pump failed. This was not a catastrophic, unrecoverable event. It was a known issue in early P-80s. The procedure was simple. Flip the switch to the auxiliary fuel pump. A calm pilot in a normal testing environment would have had time to diagnose,
flick the switch, and recover. But Bong was not a calm pilot. He was a man running on a cognitive debt accrued over 200 missions. We can visualize the critical sequence. The engine flames out, the sudden, terrifying silence. The P-80, now a 10,000-pound glider, begins to stall and roll. Bong's instincts, honed for a P-38, are screaming the wrong solutions. A P-38 with a failed engine still has another engine, or it has propellers that can be feathered. A P-80 with a flamed-out jet has nothing. He has seconds. He tries to bail out. He is too low, the aircraft already inverted. He clears the cockpit, but his parachute never has a chance to open. The investigation was swift.
The crash was due to pilot error, a failure to activate the auxiliary pump. But this simple conclusion ignores the why. Bond didn't fail because he was a bad pilot. He failed because he was arguably the most experienced combat pilot. He was a casualty of his own expertise.
His reflexes, his neurological pathways, had been so perfectly optimized for one specific type of warfare that they could not adapt to a new, seemingly safer mechanical challenge.
The war had followed him home. Not as an enemy fighter, but as a fatal flaw in his own exhausted cognition.